6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, all right, the time has arrived for 6 o'clock. March, what's the date today? 14th. We'll get underway at 6 p.m. in the old Selectmen's Room, the Beal Childhood Center Building Committee. Review of the meeting minutes from February 26th. Any questions? No? Motion to approve?
So moved.
The motion's been made to accept. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Val, how hard would it be to take the minutes from the greenness meeting and throw those out there in case any of those who actually said something that evening wanted to comment on that? Would that be difficult? Then how about if we do that, and then we'll see if you get any comment, because I don't think any of us really participated. We were there to listen more than anything else. So why don't we throw that out to the public, see if anybody thinks we caught them on target or slightly off, and see the feedback, and we can deal with that at our next meeting.
I'll do that tomorrow.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, then review and act on the following bill schedules or warrants in the back of our mind, realizing the school department folks need to leave no later than 6:25 in order to get safely to the high school for a school committee meeting. So we have two items on, Echo T Inc. for $429 and Echo T Inc. for $60. Patrick, am I correct in?
Mr. Kane, there's been one adjustment.
Yeah.
It's really just the first bill.
Beautiful.
$429.72 and not the second bill.
Okay, you'll hold that for the next meeting?
I will.
Very good. Questions on the first bill for $429?
Move we approve bill for $429.72 from Ecotech Incorporated.
Second? Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, unanimous. Why don't we take in this section, Paul Queenie, the question of your colleague wanting us to move some money around
Okay,
because of the site evaluation we're doing on two sites?
okay, so I passed out the typical budget summary report, but we can move on past that. That just, all that's changed since the last meeting of the architect and OPM invoices for the month. So the next page is Exhibit A. It shows the project budget as the town has it established with the MSBA. And the bulk of the funds are the owner's project manager and the designer. And then we have environmental site and testing at $50,000, item 3, and other at $150,000. And that's, that just accounts for the reserves and other types of things. We can't identify explicitly at the start of a project, but we know will happen. And a lot of that would be environmental and site testing. So what we're proposing here is on the third page of this, we have an accounting sheet with the MSBA. And what all this will do is it will move $120,000 from the other category to the environmental and site testing. But still, it doesn't involve any change to the budget. It just moves items from $1 from one to another. And in the event that the committee authorizes some more environmental and site types investigations like we've done previously, the money will be in the MSBA's ProPay system coded to those accounts so that the town's reimbursement will happen very quickly.
Thank you.
And if we don't need to if we move too much, we can move it back in future.
We're just moving with monies within categories. There's no increase in total monies.
Correct.
Questions? Patrick?
Mr. Kane, I just wanted to remind the committee that there was an intention with this original budget of $1.2 million to set aside funding. It was estimated at the time to be about $150,000 for the pre-K through 12 space district-wide study. So I just didn't want the committee to lose sight of that. I know this is not, necessarily directing all these funds to environmental, but that is an important piece, I believe, to, at the right time, engage services to conduct that pre-K through 12 space study, and we're going to need some funding to do that.
Okay, well, point well taken. Let's deal with the issues we have to deal with relative to the environmental coding, and if we arrive at a site and we're done, then we can always move monies back into an appropriate account.
Sure. And once we select the site and do these investigations, we'll know pretty quickly how much more is needed, and then we can very easily move it back or move it elsewhere.
Very good. Further questions? Motion?
Move to approve the transfer of funds?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We have it, unanimous. Reports, to hear the reports, review on the acts of the following matters, report of the owner's project manager.
Well, you just heard, a lot of my report was that budget revision request, and then we have the budget summary, and the only change from the last meeting was that we have reflected on this first sheet, the owner's project manager's invoice for February and the architect's invoice for February. So other than that, everything's consistent with the two contracts and with the budget, and the submittals to the MSBA are keep up, and the town keeps getting their periodic reimbursements from the MSBA.
Thank you. Report from the architect.
Good evening. Thanks for having us again. I want to kind of quickly give you a report on the additional services that we were authorized to go forward with to help us better assess between the South Street site and the Lake Street site. So services that have occurred since then, we had services for geotechnical for borings and test pits. The test pits have been dug. They did have some initial kind of findings there. They're not going to report back to us just yet. And as far as borings, they were supposed to be scheduled for later. Well, they're supposed to be scheduled for when we had the snowstorm. They got bumped. They were hoping to get it in later this week. It looks like it's going to be early next week when they'll actually do the borings at South Street. As far as soil testings, the samples were collected at Allen Farm for lead and arsenic. They went to the lab today. There's a 1-week turnaround on the lab testing there. As far as soil sampling at Glavin Center, we are in contact with DCAM to gain access. They had a few requirements. They had us that we had to kind of satisfy insurance. They issuing, in essence, a license to give us access to the site. And it looks like the earliest, between conversations of our consultant and the DCAM representative, it looks like April 3rd is the earliest we're going to gain access to the site there. So that's, we'll at least get the testing for the arsenic and soils for Allen, but it looks like Glavin will be pushed down the road a little bit, but I think still in time for you guys to make an informed decision in the end on which site you'd like to go forward with. As far as the traffic report goes, Niche has started and scheduled their counts for it. The Mass DOT Division 3 was nice enough to share the counts that they had from a report where their corridor improvements on Route 20 and 9, the current study that they're doing, that has actually helped out quite a bit. So they're currently working on that, and we're expecting that by the end of the month. Since then, since the last time we've met, in office, we had an in-house design charrette looking at floor plans. We've brought on a landscape architect under our fee to take a closer look at the options for development for parking, site features, and other things of that matter. We've met with members of the school department, reviewed some of those floor plans. We expect to meet with them again next week to kind of flush out kind of the programming, the plans, and the site features. And that's in the hope that we'll actually have, we will have, not that we hope we'll have options for the cost estimation, which is going to go to them on April 4th. And our next meeting with you guys is on the 10th. So we should have those schemes ready. We'll have pros and cons for each scheme. You'll be able to look at it solely from a programmatic respect. And you'll be able to kind of weigh your decision, and then that following meeting later that month will actually have the cost estimates in hand for you to weigh both the program and the estimate.
I take it your assumptions are based on the basic size and all of those factors that we previously discussed.
Yes, it's more about, we're really getting more into the actual configuration of the building, adjacencies. Those test fits we used before, these are going to be much more truer to what the end result will be.
When do you get into the assumptions relative to certain finishes and so forth? Because, some of the finishes, such as Bob has reminded us at Sherwood, have really proven themselves relative to a certain quality up front, and it shows throughout the lifetime of the building. I think you also have examples of floral.
Floral in the high school.
And the high school.
Middle school.
But there's also other finishes that quite frankly look nice. They don't really do anything in particular, but can be expensive. Where are you folks on those types of assumptions and guarding against unintentionally adding cost where a lower cost item would just fit fine in that, if you will, less traffic, less heavily used area.
For the PSR level, we are required to develop what's called a basis of design that will include for the assumptions for the estimate. At this point, what we will carry is the type of finishes that we used at Sherwood, for example, for the reasons, all of the reasons that you've mentioned. They're tried and true. We will be including all of the systems that are proven in terms of what the town wants, as well as additional elements of the project that are specific to that site and that actual program. As we get into schematic design, that's when we really start to go into all of these things much more carefully in terms of what type of durable material are we talking about for stairways and corridors. And we are constantly working on this through our office in terms of other projects, and any changes that come forward we'll bring forward as options. But to your question, you bring it up in a very important way, because what it's about is what is the value of that initial investment in terms of how it will save money in operating costs, and how the building works and operates throughout the years. And so I think one of the advantages that we have is having had this dialogue in this town numerous times, and so we'll continue that. If that answers your question.
I'm still looking at an overall project cost. Here we have two locations, one that's already been
Right.
acquired for an amount of money, one that will require an additional expenditure for the site, demo, and all those
Correct.
other scenarios. And then we're looking at other figures of if we go with one path for public construction, it feels and sounds like it may cost more, and whether or not you get it back in that ricochet scenario that we have in some scenarios. So I'm just trying to outline in my own head, because before you know it, okay, I want to go here, it costs more. And I want to go with that construction, it costs more.
True.
And before you know it, it's da-da-da-da-da-da. And now the number is even higher than it was the first night than we were here. And I just want to keep myself cognizant of that, because it's going to be a constant opportunity cost conversation as we move forward. Do we know if the building fits at Centec yet? Are we comfortable?
We're confident that we can fit the building in. We will find a way, or a couple. But the compromise, as we anticipated in the PDP, will probably be with site features. In terms of, one issue we're really concerned about is that 120 car parent pickup line, which is going to be a factor at that site, because we know of the proximity to Route 20. And if we have cars going out onto South Street, it will be an issue. So that's the part, Sean, that we're looking at very, very carefully right now. But we can fit the building on, and we are taking that conservative approach with the information that we currently have in terms of the buildable, developable area. The information that we're getting through the additional site work, if anything, we hope would expand our opportunities on that site, but it's not looking very likely so far. The data that we're getting is reinforcing that we're going in the right direction with the parameters that we're working with there.
Which direction?
I'm saying in terms of the area that we're looking at is developable, it's not likely that it will expand beyond that.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah, okay. I thought you made that relatively clear a couple of meetings ago. We are where we are.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But to answer your question, in terms of the PSR, the level of the construction, the type of materials, in terms of comparing the Allen Farm site to the Glavin Center, will be identical. The building itself, we feel we can fit. We will use certainly the same metrics in terms of this is what that building will be. When we get into schematic design, and we will have the opportunity to look at that more closely. The estimating will be based on that. It'll be based on that level, to the level that we're ready for the PSR.
Yeah. And the other thing you may not be aware of, or you may be, is a PMA is actually going to have their own third-party estimator for this set of estimates. So LPA will do theirs with AM Fogarty, the same company we used the last time around, and PMA is hiring their own, and then we'll actually have a reconciliation period. So you will really get a really good sense of where it's going to come in at this preliminary stage. Once again, we're using kind of figures to make sure we're covering what we're looking at early on. And we should also have a better sense as far as site features now that we're taking these added steps and really testing a building that suits the program. But, also now that we got understanding of the topography and geotechnical and other matters, we can really take a close look.
Yeah, I'm hoping, obviously with tonight's presentation to the Board of Selectmen being bumped to our next meeting because of Joe's and others need to be at a school committee meeting, I'm hoping you can have some more meat around that, because I think that's going to be a real item of interest for my board in terms of the parcel already acquired.
Mm-hmm.
Do you hold it in its
Yes.
current condition for the long term, believing someday something will happen? And go to Glavin, where the bill was heard today. Kevin's represented the town, and it seems to be moving along uneventfully. The the Inspector General added a paragraph, which is just to add to what one might say transparency. But we know now verbally that the value from DCAM is $915,000. So on top of, amongst friends, $2 million for demo and hazardous materials remediation, so you're scratching $3 million more amongst friends. So not an insignificant number. But at least one, I think we have our four corners around at this point.
That's excellent.
So that, I would anticipate in 2 weeks that there'll be a level of interest on that subject matter. I think I may have gotten us a little off track.
No, it's okay. It kind of leads into the other thing I was going to report on. As you may or may not recall, the potential vernal pools that are
Yeah.
at South Street. So we're starting to get into the season. We're just a couple weeks away from the beginning of the season where we start looking for the type of critters and insects and animals, amphibians that would be habitating those vernal pools if they are in fact vernal pools. So that whole certification observation period, usually it consists of 3 separate visits, kind of at the beginning of the season, the middle of the season, and end of the season. Something we want to kind of keep on your radar. If we miss this season, we'll have to wait till next season to do it. It may be something good for the town to have on record, regardless, given the fact that you own the property, to get good understanding. So it is services that we could put a proposal out there for, but we want to kind of put it on your radar, get a sense of
Oh,
which.
we need to nail this down one way, or as a town, we need to
Yeah,
know.
okay.
Oh, God, yes.
Yep.
Because that parcel potentially has gone from one thing to something very different than that thing. So certainly we will want to take advantage of this season
Okay.
to nail that down.
To kind of give you a sense of the way that season goes is we could encounter something and know right away. And if we had to wait till the end of the season, it might be quite or a little past the PSR phase. But ultimately, we'll know. We're planning worst case scenario, so
Yeah.
we don't see it being an issue either way. But we can at least figure it out.
Judy? Questions from the committee up to this point? John?
As part of the preliminary presentation, will we see basic room finish schedules, basic door types?
No. For the PSR, it is really a further developed test fit, if you will. So if you remember the blocks that we had on each site, we're working with the educational representatives to develop those to more meet the bubble diagrams, if you remember the bubble diagram. So they will be advanced to another step. If you can visualize it as almost a conceptual design, the next step is schematic design. In schematic design, we do have finish schedules, and we do have the types of doors included. It's a little bit rudimentary. It's not a construction document. It's
Right.
still schematic design, but it is enough to say, these are the finishes for a typical corridor classroom. Absolutely. We actually will have elements of that already built into the PSR. We know that it's an air-conditioned building at this point because it's going to be used year-round. All of that type of thing will be, those are important features even now to have in the estimate, so we will have those descriptions of systems.
So it'll be more narrative then?
Yes, it will be narrative in terms of the systems, and then the building is more, it'd be advanced beyond the site plans that you saw, and then we will select a preferred solution, and we develop those plans just a little bit further to get us ready, launched for schematic design.
Thank you.
Other questions? No, anything else, John?
The only other thing is, know we're up against it, we're trying to get the 6:25 end time. The Green Engineers minutes were distributed. Katie probably will have a few comments just for your review, and we can give you our take on it. But it is something we just want to bring up at this point so that we can discuss it definitely at the next meeting.
Beauty. Before you arrived, we decided that we would post those out there for those who participated in the event. They thought they said something differently than we heard it.
Wonderful. That
So
makes
we'll
sense.
ask Val to do that tomorrow. We'll see what input she gets, if any, and then she can report to the committee at its next meeting.
Okay. The next decision will be whether we want to go with a LEED, version 4 scorecard or the New England CHIP scorecard. And this is something that will become a part of schematic design. We have,
We must pick one of two?
we must pick one of two. And to give you a sense, within this document, there are pros and cons listed of each. CHIPS is what we did for Sherwood, as was explained. One of the highlights of CHIPS is the maintenance, training, emphasis in the actual review process. That is something that we will embed in our specifications regardless, so rest assured that that will be a part of it. A second feature that was brought up in the presentation was there is a crime prevention component to CHIPS. Again, that's something that we will do as part of the standard course of what we do here. So that is a differentiator there. The biggest difference really from LEED and CHIPS, I think, from this committee's perspective, is that the final filing process, the whole project can be closed out earlier with LEED than it can with CHIPS. When we initially selected CHIPS for Sherwood, the filing fees were vastly different for a LEED filing than for a CHIPS, and that was a driving factor for the reason we went to CHIPS for that. Since then, LEED for Schools has kind of balanced that out, so it's no longer that type of a factor. So for the reasons outlined, we would recommend a committee to endorse going with the LEED version 4 format. This is kind of the Cliff Notes version to hit 625. Additionally, it is recognized by the public very well in terms of what sustainable design means. It's something, CHIPS is collaborative for high-performance schools. It's something that we find ourselves having to explain. So we've gone through both. They both have a tremendous amount of filing that's primarily on the shoulders of the architect and the contractor. CHIPS candidly has more for the owner to do. So that's another thing that I think we talked about that a little bit. That's challenging when you're asking people who have other more than full-time jobs to fill in the blanks.
So what do we get from MSBA for doing this? Do we get
Well,
anything?
that's an excellent question. The baseline we have to do, one, and then we have to hit certain baseline parts. What we can do is then, as we progress through schematic design, look at what it would take to get 2 additional reimbursement points. So the baseline, in a quick nutshell, baseline requires us to have 10% above stretch code in the base contract. To get the 2 additional reimbursement points, we need an additional 10%. There are some other elements to it, but that's kind of a snapshot of it. So what we would expect you would want to see is sort of a cost-benefit analysis for that.
Does it make any sense whatsoever to consider solar for this as a net metering operation where it would generate its own electricity?
That's something that we would work through with Selco specifically in terms of how that would function.
There will be no subsidy. They will help us,
Yeah.
short of any meaningful financial assistance. Otherwise, they're committed to us, though. Now, there's not going to be a great subsidy. Let's not kid ourselves. So
Yeah.
they'll help us on the electrical side relative to the engineering and so forth.
Yep.
But it either pays for itself or it doesn't, and we make a
Exactly.
decision to deal with that. But
Exactly.
there's not gonna be any subsidy from the rest of us so that the school can enjoy a subsidized electric bill.
Correct.
Oh, I'm sorry, Patrick, yes?
Mr. Kane, I just want to confirm that our project team that on the Sherwood project, that project met the CHIPS minimum threshold standard, but also went above and did earn the 2 additional reimbursement points from MSP,
That
is
is
that right?
correct. That is
Right.
correct. However, what was required at that time was less than is required now.
Okay,
So we would be advanced beyond that.
thank you.
In each case, you have to exceed the requirements of the code, particularly with respect to energy. But the code has become more stringent, so the MSBA says, well, to get the extra incentive points, you always have to beat the code by a certain amount. So because the code became more energy, required more energy efficient buildings, this will have to go along with that.
Understood, thank you.
Anything else for the architect? Anything else from the architect? Okay, we dealt with item 5, correct? So I have item 6 as the next date for the following meeting, which would be the 27th of March, correct?
No, we had April 10th? Is that
I think
right?
we're going to schedule the
Oh, it was
27th.
Did we do the 27th tentatively?
Well, now we have the presentation to the board that evening.
Oh, of course, yes.
So if there's anything we should catch up, even
Okay.
at 6:30,
Very good.
let's just think about it. We don't have to call
Yeah.
it this evening,
Yeah.
but I'm saying
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
back for the board. Joe, you can make that evening?
Yes.
The team, great. So we'll be at 7 o'clock on the 27th, and let's let it percolate for a week or so. But if there's anything else, if you have more to report on the site,
Yep.
et cetera, why don't we, matter of fact, why don't we just plug in 6:30?
Okay, very good.
So that we know we're plugged in and posted, and that way if we have any more interesting news on the site, we can talk about it at 6:30 before we go in for 7. Make sense? And Val, also, why don't you get out the complete set of the next meeting times and dates for us, just so we can plan, because town meeting will be coming up, et cetera. Anything else? No? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, thank you very much. We're adjourned.